Okay, this is going to be a complicated one. Beginning in 1979, a long series of scandals have rocked Belgium. In 1979, a psychiatrist called André Pinon was divorcing his wife and hired a private dick. The PI recorded a conversation between the couple in which the wife confessed involvement in a series of orgies with prominent persons. The plan was to use this recording to get custody of the pair's 2 children. That didn't go entirely according to plan. Instead, Dr. Pinon's house was burglarized and the tape was taken, although another copy existed and was given to the police. The family court judge refused to allow the tape to be played and awarded custody to the mother. Dr. Pinon was then contacted by another member of the orgy gang, one Christine Dutroux, who claimed that the family court judge was one of the gang also. She further claimed that the wife of the man who ran the orgies had died in mysterious circumstances, and that the judge in Pinon's case had brought children to the orgies to be used by pedophiles. The meeting with Dutroux was also secretly recorded, and the recording was given to a left-wing magazine in Belgium called Paw. Soon after that, the magazine's offices were destroyed in a fire. The culprit was a commando unit organized by the Youth Front, the Front de la Jeunesse. This unit was led by Jean-Philippe Van Engelen, who then fled to Paraguay, which was then run by a dictator whose secret police chief was a serial killer who cut the hands off children and raped and murdered them. The motive for the arson was claimed to be an expose of the FJ's paramilitary youth camps in the Ardennes. Jean-Philippe Engeland was a close friend of Paul Latinus, the head of the Westland New Post. The Westland New Post was originally a branch of the FJ which was made up of gendarmerie officers. Latinus turned up dead, supposedly of a suicide, although police at the scene thought it was murder. Latinus was found to be in possession of stolen NATO telexes and pages from the police Pinon file. Latinus had reported death threats to the police which he claimed were related to the Pinon case. Another member of the Westland New Post, Libert, has said that the WNP was hired by the intelligence services to do reconnaissance on several supermarkets in the Brabant area, which were later attacked by the GSNG of Niervels, the terrorist group who some thought might have been covering up for pedophile gangs. 4 persons mentioned in the Pinon file were killed in the gang's attacks. The prosecutor in all these cases, the death of Latinus, the burglary of Pinon, the arson at Paw, was one Jean Dutroux. In all cases he refused to prosecute. Jean Dutroux was also involved in another scandal at the same time, the Eurosystems scandal. A consortium of Belgian defense companies put together a bid to build hospitals in Saudi Arabia, and as with all defense procurement in Saudi Arabia, there was a bribery scandal, a fraudulent bankruptcy, a tax evasion scandal. The leader of the FJ was also the leader of one of the Eurosystems subsidiaries. The Eurosystems deal was sealed by a prostitution scandal. The men doing the deal, including the Baron de Bonvoisin, who funded the FJ, and the Crown Prince, Prince Albert, recruited the woman called Fortunato Israel who ran a prostitution ring called the Circle of Tuna. Quite an alarming name for a prostitution ring, in my eyes. The Circle of Tuna investigation led to a place called the Jonathan Club, which was a sex club linked to the eco-fascist New Forces Party and allegedly used to tape prominent people in compromising positions. One Gabriel Tot was, for example, filmed wrestling in jam with naked women. To quote former Belgian Prime Minister Van den Boenants after allegations made against him of pedophilia, "I do not peddle in jam." Tot was also said to be linked to the Pinon Affair, the gang of Niervels, and to Paraguay. The Circle of Tuna had also been mentioned in the aforementioned tape of Christine Dutroux acquired by Dr. Pinon. Obviously, to those of us in the conspiracy milieu, this is a reminder of similar stories told about Craig Spencer's similar pedophile blackmail operation in Washington in the 80s and the tales told by Mohammed Atta's pink-haired stripper girlfriend about what happened at the strip club she worked at. The investigation into the circle of tuna and related matters was terminated by the aforesaid Jean de Preter on the orders of the aforesaid Paul van den Boenants. Jean de Preter was also the lead prosecutor in another interesting case, that of André Kool's. Kool's was a deputy prime minister in Belgium, until he was murdered after claiming he was going to bring down the government with revelations about the arms industry. He was going to implicate our very own Jonathan Agin and Mark Thatcher, America's Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Neil Bush, of Silverado fame, Canada's billionaire Bronfman brothers and the Liege Mafia, along with Belgian politicians. Belgian TV found a witness who claimed the prominent Belgian politician Guy Matot had ordered the killing. The investigation was eventually put in the hands of one Judge Connerot, who was eventually dismissed seemingly because he was doing too good a job, as would happen again in his later investigation of the paedophile Marc Dutroux and his links to powerful people. Connerot arrested mafia figures linked to America's Pizza Connection case and implicated Bettino Craxi. Bettino Craxi was, of course, the horribly corrupt leader of the Italian Socialist Party who had been bribed by the propaganda Masonic Lodge leader Licio Gelli to subvert Italian democracy and keep the Christian Democrats in power. Licio Gelli, who was invited to Ronald Reagan's inaugural address and was linked to the owner of Italy's largest private bank before it went bankrupt, and he was found swinging from Blackfriars Bridge, in what was eventually ruled a murder. Connerot also arrested Alain van der Beest, who was Kool's successor in his official post. He was also murdered thereafter, and his driver was arrested trying to cash stolen bearer bonds. This driver, Taxque, had links to the Mujahideen and was eventually convicted of Kool's murder. The Belgian government was gutted by prosecutions of corruption in relation to this scandal, even the Secretary-General of NATO being successfully prosecuted, although given a laughably light sentence. And all because of a few bribes from a helicopter company. Of course, one Mendes of the arms firm Fabrique Nationale, who allegedly faked end-user certificates to aid arms smuggling to embargoed nations such as Iraq and Iran, was said to have known things about Pinon and Nevels, before he too was murdered. So we have an excessively large cast of prominent political and civil figures. These people are involved in a long list of arms dealing and sex scandals and are linked to terrorists. The next development was the revelation of Maud Serra and the ex-witnesses. These were figures claiming to have been victims of paedophile abuses by a ring of prominent people, including government ministers, senior businessmen and members of the royal family. These people were the same ones who had been implicated in the Pinon file, in the Eurosystems and Agusta scandals, and for involvement with the West and New Post in the Front de Large Unis. By 1996 things had died down when Marc Dutroux was arrested for a series of paedophile outrages. He was again linked to a conspiracy involving senior people, although the official story was that he acted alone. Alone, that is to say, with his wife and another accomplice. A jury failed to reach a verdict on a third co-conspirator, one Michael Niol. Niol was a known operator of sex clubs and associate of the high and mighty. His club, the Dolo, was frequented by Van den Boenants and his driver, and the gangster Madney Bahouche. Niol was also a close associate of another violent paedophile called Patrice Dutroux. Dutroux had also once been given an absurdly light sentence thanks to the magistrate Arnisons, the same one who had once decided against Pinon in his custody case. I have so far tried to weave a narrative showing how one scandal flows into the next with the same characters, but some things should still be mentioned which don't fit into a linear narrative. Therefore I'm just going to list these oddities and leave them to fester. The private investigator once hired by Pinon to follow his wife, Bob Louvigny, has some odd little things in his history. He collected a list of number plates apparently from cars at orgies and refused to give the list to Pinon. He was accused of blackmailing members of the Westland New Post with this information. He was also associated with some FJ members and the robberies of some gun shops he had been providing security for. He was also accused of helping a criminal gendarme escape to, once again, Paraguay. Again, along with Rogan Tadeurillo, he was implicated in the death of Cools. By the time of the Dutroux scandal, the Belgian pie industry had been regulated and centralized under a single governing body authorized by the state. None other than Bob was appointed as its head. Paul Latinus, the suicided head of the Westland New Post, had once been paid by the American Defense Intelligence Agency and before his death had briefly exiled himself to Pinochet's Chile at the time the Colonia Dignidad was at the height of its infamy. As early as the mid-80s, Pinon claims he was asked about the butcher of Mans, Marc Dutroux, and Michael Niol. The official Belgian government investigation into their role in the Iran/Contra scandal resulted in the Atlas dossier, which implicated the usual cast of pederasts including Bierry, Matot, and Van den Boemans. It also implicated André Cools, the assassinated deputy prime minister, and a weapons firm called ISCO. ISCO was also accused by one of the ex-witnesses of allowing the pederasts to abuse children in one of their factories. The Regista helicopter scandal was also part of the Italian scandal known as Tangentopoli. It also eventually linked to the Westland scandal in Britain and Leon Breton, alleged paedophile. Marc Dutroux, despite being an unemployed electrician, was an associate of Portuguese diplomat Jorge Rito, who was prosecuted in the Portuguese paedophile scandal and the Casapio Children's Home. This same Rito was also assigned to UNESCO. Michael Niol was also associated with the Diaz Singlaub, who traded opium alkaloids with the Mujahideen back in the 80s. Niol was also involved with the Moonies and the World Anti-Communist League, and also with the Sasakawa Foundation, which is part of the Yakuza. A man called Jacques Forez and a woman called Elise DeWitt were killed in the terrorist atrocities of the Gang of Niervels, which was rumored to either be a fascist terror group trying to undermine democracy or to be a fascist terror group trying to cover up pedophile crimes. They were killed while stopped at a petrol station, after claiming at the start of their journey that they were in possession of a videotape of an orgy with children and prominent people. It was revealed that Charlie Dupper, one of the usual cast of orgiasts, had been blackmailed for 140 million francs, and although DeWitt and Forez had suffered a string of losses in business, they had just purchased an area of the Ardennes. DeWitt worked for a friend of Van den Boemans. As usual, this attack by the Gang of Niervels was dressed up as a robbery, in which the loot was some oil tins, some coffee and some chocolates, which were dumped after the attack. Once again the prosecutor in this case was Jean de Preta. As UNESCO was linked to this series of events through Rito and Dutroux, so was UNICEF linked through the Center for Research and Information on Childhood and Sexuality, a pedophile group, and also through the bizarre cult based in the town of Forquier-le-Marche. That group had a collection of human skulls, an underground lair in disused mineshafts, a large income from child pornography, and apparent blackmail operations, and in apparently international scope with customers as far afield as the USA. And, frankly, so it goes on. We could continue forever with the links to King Cora, Jersey, Brian Allen, Omaha, Sweden's submarine panic, President Sarkozy's rescue of pedophiles from Chad, André Latrecois.